So welcome everyone. Today we have Maria Sofia Marmanides, and she is speaking about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction of 2024. What can we expect? Maria is a practicing astrologer who specializes in horary, mundane, and natal astrology. She is also the author of 2 books about divination, the One Card Tarot Journal and the Oracle Card Journal. And she is also the creator of the Women of Myth Oracle deck. She publishes weekly astrological content on social media and writes monthly horoscopes for Woman Home magazine. She resides in Connecticut and is a Leo sun, Cancer moon, and Virgo rising. You can find her online at mariasofiaastro.com. Maria,
Thanks.
it's nice to have you with us, and you can go ahead and share your screen and get started.
Share this.
Jeff,
Maria, would you like a... Yes, Christelle, go ahead.
sorry, I'm just gonna ask about questions and answers. Maria,
Yes, thank you.
yes. Do you want to go ahead with that, or do you want me to explain, or
Oh, me?
no, Jeff?
Yeah, it's okay. Either way. Go ahead, Christelle.
Okay, so everybody, you are more than welcome, and this is in accordance to what Maria has asked. She's very flexible, so if you're happy to ask any questions, please do so in the Q&A chat. Or also, if you happen to have a conversation in the chat box and there's questions there, Jeff and I will be monitoring, and we can interject Sophie at an appropriate time during her speaking. And then that's it, really. I think that's it in terms of rules and regulations.
Yeah. All right. So thank you both. Thank you, Opa, for having me. I'm really excited about this presentation. I wrote an article, and a lot of this presentation is based on that. But, anytime you translate an article into a presentation, it really just afforded me with like a lot of opportunities to really kind of dive deep into what this conjunction can really bring forward. So like Jeff said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Maria. Well, for those of you who do know me, I'm also Maria, but please do feel free if there's something I was telling Christelle earlier, I have Mercury conjunct my ascendant. So I talk fast and I talk a lot. So, and I know there's people joining us from all over the globe. So if there's something that I say that, I stumble over or I speak too fast, please do feel free and I can try to clarify any points that I made. The good news is, let me see if I can move forward. So like a Virgo rising, I like to know what I signed up for and what I can expect. So these are kind of the 5 areas that we'll go through today. Just the key symbolism of this conjunction, kind of breaking down, Jupiterian symbolism, Uranian signatures, the Taurus theme, how that comes together. Section 2, we'll look into a historical overview of what previous conjunctions, particularly in Taurus, have brought forward. But one of the things I found through my research, and we'll get into this, is that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus is actually kind of rare. It happens a lot in Gemini. There weren't that many examples of this conjunction in Taurus. So like I said, there's so much to get through in terms of this presentation and just in terms of what this conjunction brings forward. But I mean, that could be a whole other topic about, planetary movement and why it doesn't happen in Taurus too much, but I won't bore anybody because astronomy is not my strong suit. But it was interesting to note that this is a rare conjunction, not in terms of how often Jupiter and Uranus come together, that's every 14 years, but it's rare in that it doesn't often happen in Taurus. Then we're going to get to some predictions, and I put predictions kind of in quotes. So some of it is going to be just mining through the news in terms of like what I think, I just got a news alert on it came through on my watch, but I got a news alert the other day about a medical advancement in terms of there was a pig transplant, an organ transplant, and it was a medical marvel, and it just happened this week. So those are the kinds of things that I'm going to cue us when we get into this section to kind of pay attention to when you get those news alerts on your phone or when you're scanning the headlines right now. Things that happen during these conjunction points are things that even if they seem rather small, they probably won't, but even if they do, they will have echoes in the future. And then I call this horoscopic opportunities. I don't really present any predictions, quote unquote, for the signs, but just themes that this conjunction can bring up depending on which house it's falling into, or if you have any fixed placements around 21 degrees or so of the fixed signs, that this might be potent for you. So I'm going to start with some quotes in terms of like how I synthesize this and how I thought about this. And I think it's important because, this isn't something that I've thought of, but it's just astrological transits don't occur in a vacuum. They're all leading up to, they're all kind of accumulation of everything that's come before. So great doubt will eventually lead to a great awakening. And that's a quote from Rabia Basri. And I think that's important because when we consider where we were in 2020, you have this idea of great doubt. So we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and the headlines were really scary for a long period of time. And I think from a collective experience that we all had across the globe. And if you'll allow me to say, and you can disagree with this word, but if we have a collective trauma around that Saturn-Pluto conjunction and what the COVID pandemic brought forward and just all the different implications from a societal level, it's like that is kind of baked into how we're experiencing this current transit of Uranus and Jupiter in 2024. So it's like it's not necessarily something we can just ignore. But like that quote was indicating, after a period of great doubt and great uncertainty and this feeling of like, there was a lot of news about death, there was a lot of news about violence, there was a lot of news about political upheaval and riots and economic upheaval. What does that then, how do we as a society then move forward as, here we are in 2024, and now we've got this kind of huge conjunction happening, kind of societally shifting conjunction, if you will. So this is kind of laying the land right now. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Now, is that something that I necessarily agree with or propose or am a proponent of? Not necessarily. It is a quote, though, that I wanted to bring forward because I think it encapsulates where the moment is in terms of where we are as a society and kind of like an inflection point of, I think, and this is me, Maria, talking in terms of what I believe. I think that there was a missed opportunity during the COVID pandemic, particularly, and forgive me, especially to the more global residents that are joining me. I reside in America. I am American, so I did try to be purposeful about not just bringing American news or American perspectives to this. But forgive me if I do, because I am American, so I might just have an American lens to how I view things. So feel free to call me out on it if I do say something. But I do think, at least, from my experience of experiencing COVID and politics in America in the last like 4 years or so, I believe that there was a missed opportunity to kind of bring people together in a way that, our Surgeon General is talking about a loneliness epidemic. So my particular thesis, and I'll carry forward, is that, there's all this scary stuff happening, and there's a lack of trust, I think, in terms of sources of news, sources of leadership, and we're just kind of questioning everything. So, I think when social media came out in in the early 2000s, there was this, oh my goodness, like here's this device, there's this technology that's going to bring us all together. I'm going to be able to talk to somebody from first grade that I haven't seen in like 100 years. Well, not that long, but there's this idea that it was going to bring us all together. And I think what's interesting about what's happening now with AI, and is AI going to take over the world? And are we going to have this kind of like humanitarian crisis? I think we're starting less from that optimistic perspective. And I do think part of that is everything that happened in 2020. And I think now in 2024, we're kind of looking at AI and we're much more skeptical about the good that it can bring. But I do think there's kind of this balance, and I'm definitely going to talk about the balance of, the good and bad, positive, negative, shadow, light sides of this conjunction, just in terms of, right now we're at this critical moment of, Pluto in Aquarius, and that has a lot of technological implications, society shifting implications. It has in the past in terms of the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution. We're also coming, 2024, what else is happening? And again, sorry if I'm bringing too much America into this, but it is because the eclipse point is crossing through the United States. The next great American eclipse is occurring. So there's also that
Hey,
in terms
Maria,
of yes.
I'm so sorry. I
Yes.
really didn't want to interrupt your flow, but we've had a few people asking if you could just slow down a little bit.
Sure.
It's a little fast.
Sure.
I know you mentioned it in the beginning.
Yes,
I can
no,
talk fast too, so I understand, but just,
it's okay.
yeah,
No,
just a little bit. Thank you so much.
that's totally fine. I know I do talk fast, so I'm glad that you called it out. So where was I? So, and it's okay if I don't pick up the exact train of thought that I was on, but the idea is Pluto in Aquarius is co-occurring. The Great American Eclipse is co-occurring. Jupiter, once it enters Gemini, will be squaring Saturn. And this is not like, no part of this presentation is meant to scare anyone, but or make even any kind of, outsized predictions, but that's often a signature of wars. And that's not groundbreaking or a shocking thing to say because we're in the midst of them. So it's just like those signatures are definitely going to flavor this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that I'm about to like go through kind of in more depth. But yeah, so it's like, so just kind of setting the scene, like we came from this moment of great doubt in 2020 and like what, people were losing their jobs. Social distancing, we couldn't be around each other. Then it's like we kind of come out of that and it's like there's the Great Recession, there's the great, what was it, the Great Resignation. There's a lot of news in terms of economics, in terms of technology taking over, or just like the scariness of the future. So this is all happening kind of simultaneously. So what is my thesis in terms of what this Jupiter and what we can expect from this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in 2024? I think what I'm hoping to talk about, and maybe I'm just going to use the word prove, maybe I am hoping to prove it to you, but I'm always open to hearing anybody disagree with me too, and there's time for that at the end. But what this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction of 2024 promises to bring is transformative change to society's current way of living. This offers us an opportunity to change how we relate to each other and the material world. But with growth comes great discomfort and often initial opposition by those who fear change and those who have a lot to lose from the disruption of the status quo. So, that is just in terms of, I believe her name is Kara Swisher. I just heard an interview. She has a book coming out and she interviewed a lot of like the tech giants, if you will, like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and all of that. And the opening line of her new book, I haven't read her book yet, but I plan to based on this interview I heard with her. But the opening line of her book was, or is, it was always about capitalism all along, meaning that, when Mark Zuckerberg, if you had asked him in the beginning, was talking about why he created Facebook, it was like, oh, it was about bringing communities together and, allowing people to interact with those first graders that they hadn't seen in, 10, 20 years or something like that. And when you talk to Elon Musk, it's about changing the world. And they inflate their purpose by talking about the societal, bringing utopian, if you will, implications. But at the end of the day, it really is about money. And I do think that influence, if you will, is coloring how we're looking at AI. I think AI, and I'll get to this in the presentation too, so forgive me if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think AI is exciting in terms of medical advancements and the ability to, screen for cancer, solve cancer potentially, to organ transplants and gene therapy and all of that. But at the same time, we're talking, most of what we've heard about AI is that it's going to get us all out of jobs and it's going to replace humanity. So I think that those we're at kind of this critical juncture, if you will, during the time of this conjunction. And so if I was a better graphic designer, this would have been a reveal, but I'm not a better graphic designer. So if you could picture it this way, I hope you can. It really just is like, what's that kind of positive manifestation of Jupiter, but also what's that kind of like negative-ish, challenging-ish aspect of what Jupiter can bring forward. This is absent of the conjunction. This is just Jupiter in general. I'll go through this relatively quickly. I believe that most of us are astrologers or have some, or at least astro enthusiasts. So I don't think I need to go through this in too much depth, but I think it's just helpful as grounding because these are some keywords that I definitely will go through as we get into the history as well as into the predictive realm. So Jupiter can be generosity, which is growth and abundance and expansion. We all know that. But Jupiter can also be excess. Jupiter can be opportunity, but Jupiter can be overreach. Jupiter can be confidence and hope and optimism, but Jupiter can also be pride. Jupiter can be very wise and a lot of knowledge, but Jupiter can also be strict dogma. So Uranian keywords, it could be breakthroughs, that kind of eureka moment, but it could also be breakdowns. Jupiter can be disrupting the status quo, which is a good thing sometimes, but with disruptions of the status quo comes disruptions of stability. Uranus can be revolutionary, but that can also feel like rebellion. And those words you can look at them both positively and negatively. It depends on your threshold, I guess, for risk, and change, and how much comfort you find in that. Uranian keywords, innovation, but then there's also chaos. So we talked about Uranus, and we talked about AI being something groundbreaking that we've never seen before in terms of how we'll relate in terms of society and relate to each other. But it's also bringing up a lot of chaotic feelings and, who's in charge, and is there regulation for this? And really, what does it mean? So for us, as we kind of move forward. When we synthesize these kind of themes together, I looked at some public figures with this natal placement. I'm not gonna go through each one of them, but I think what I like about this, and is that each one of these people, whether we're looking at Naomi Osaka, whether we're looking at Steve Jobs, whether we're looking at Ang Lee or Margaret Cho, Simone Biles, it's like each one of them has that kind of perfect blend in terms of their reputation of that kind of Jupiterian, larger than life, kind of optimistic, going forward, pride, confidence, accomplishment, achievement. But I think there's a Uranian aspect to it in terms of they did something in their field that no one else has done before, whether that's who they are as a person, who they are culturally, nationally, racially, or just in terms of like what the product they brought forward that they're most known for bringing forward is just something different than the quote unquote status quo or what was expected. Greta Gerwig with Barbie, Ang Lee with Brokeback Mountain, Steve Jobs with the iPhone. So there's just something where they were revolutionary in their field. Greta Gerwig being like, I think the #1 woman director in terms of bringing in billions at the box office. So there's something within them where you can add, something about their personality or their personal upbringing or personal identifiers that makes them unique in a category where they're not like others. And then finally, Taurus. So I am an astrologer, and I'm willing to hear other takes of this, but I don't know if I'm necessarily an archetypal astrologer. I personally pay less attention to the signs than I do the planets and the planetary aspects. I do think it's worthwhile to just talk about Taurus for a little bit, because I do want to dive into the Taurus conjunction in particular, given how rare this is. But I do think sometimes absent of the sign that it's in, I think that the planetary symbolism that we just went through, I think is more important than just the sign. I think the sign is just a little bit of like dressing to it, but you're free to disagree with me. And I would love to hear if you do. So some Taurian keywords that I think we want to look out for: resources and provisions, the material world and the environment, stability and groundedness, dogmatic, practical, stubborn, slow. And I think, one of the things that we've seen since Uranus has been in, and I know the outer planets don't really have, exaltations and all of that, but since Uranus has been in Taurus, I think that it's been a very loud presence in Taurus, because the Uranian keywords are so starkly in contrast to those Taurian keywords of stability. Uranus is liberating, Uranus is arousing. There's like, it's want to break things up, and Taurus doesn't like that. So I just think that's an interesting statement, or just kind of idea to keep in mind as we get through and kind of dig into what this conjunction will bring. Again, sorry, I went to the second bullet point first, but just because what I was talking about. But Jupiter's expansive, wise, benevolent, and generous, but it can also be like, kind of kingly ostentatiousness, like bombast, all of that kind of overreaching that comes from overconfidence. Jupiter is Zeus, Jupiter is the king. So sometimes you can't really talk to them. Like that can be a little bit of a narcissistic quality, if you'll allow me to say that. So it's like, I think sometimes we just have to watch for that too, that kind of, and I think even with the Steve Jobs example, I think there's been plenty of deep dives into him that he was a horrible tyrant to work for. But also a genius, and how much leeway do you give somebody when they're like that would be another discussion and another presentation. But, these are just things to keep in mind. So together, I think it's exciting, it's revolutionary, but revolutions can make people feel unsafe, disoriented, dysregulated, and blindsided. So those are just kind of those competing factions of some people are going to be excited about AI, some people are not. Some people are going to be, you know, having kind of that rebellious nature or wanting to shake things up. I read and I'm trying not to bring my own personal politics into this, but I was listening to an interview about the upcoming US election, and they were talking to Gen Z voters who don't, I think, have as many memories or as clear maybe memories of the Trump presidency previously. And they were, one of the things that Gen Z voters were saying, which I think is reflective of this transit or this conjunction, is, well, maybe it's better to have somebody come in to shake things up. And so it struck me that they used shake things up because that's what Uranus does. And we're talking about Donald Trump, who is many kinds of persons, but, you know, a Jupiter, at least a Jupiterian figure in terms of his larger than life qualities. So here we are, so synthesis and practice, where we are, recent and current disruptions to the status quo have been, reflecting Uranus's increasingly loud presence in the sign of the bull. We have supply chain issues that are still stemming from the global pandemic in terms of inflation rates too, like people seeing those in terms of gas prices, grocery prices, you know, just buying regular goods and services it's very expensive right now for most people. There have been labor movements, there have been union strikes, there have been financial upheavals of the world economy, recession, inflation, crypto imploding, but now sort of coming back, and just the volatility of that. And then we've seen a lot of escalation of both military and political conflicts across the globe. So now we're going to dive into where we've been, so we can kind of just get a sense of Uranus and Taurus. But I do see someone has their hand up. Do you want to come off mute? I don't know if that is Chriselle, are they able to do that if they want to?
They can do if you're happy to accept, go for it.
Or I feel like right now, because like I feel like now I'm getting into section 2. So sure, like if they want, I mean, this is like gives me a chance to pause too.
Okay, we have a lot of hands up, I think. Oh no, we don't. Sorry, that's my bad.
Oh, okay, because I was just like, oh no, what have I said?
You're good. Gam, are you there? Did you want to say something, Gam? Can you unmute?
I just allowed Gam to speak and asked them to unmute if they want to. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe
Okay.
Gam just let us know again. I think go ahead, Maria, you can move on. I think Gam, her comment, please put it in the chat box and we'll move on. Thank you.
No problem. But I did get a chance to drink some water, so that was good. Okay, so now we're gonna get into, this is section 2. Oopsie, skipping ahead. Like I said, it was really kind of interesting for me as I was doing, and some of the work was just like, you know, clicking through on my solar fire and just kind of like trying to see where this conjunction occurred, because it occurs about every 14 years, but it was just funny to me how rare it was to occur in the sign of Taurus. Sorry for the grainy photo, but I did find a photo from, and you really can't see it. I don't know if you can see my cursor as I'm presenting, but that's May 12th, 1941, which is like, I think literally 3 days, either before or after, forgive me for not remembering, when the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction occurred in 1941. This was history's worst, because this is history's worst raid. And this was about the Blitz of London that occurred smack dab as this conjunction was present and occurring. So we had and then later in the year in 1941, a few months later, we had the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which, if you look at it that way, in terms of like the US's involvement was more minimal at the time of 1941. But after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, that's when the war, to use a Jupiterian word, so there's this shocking event that occurred, which will bring the signature of Uranus. And then if we want to talk about Jupiterian expansion, that's when this war really expanded, because now the US became involved. So now it's like this major global conflict. What else occurred in 1941? Roosevelt delivers the Four Freedoms speech. From a medical perspective, there was the first penicillin injection. From a technological perspective, there was the first US commercial FM station goes on air. So I just think that these kinds of things are interesting signatures to see, because they're going to flavor and kind of come through in when I get to 2024, which I promise will be soon, because I'm sure that's why most of us came here. But when we get to that, I just think it's interesting how those kinds of key tenets are co-present every time this conjunction occurs. let's look next. So 1775, it was, oh no, I missed one. 1858, this was at 20 Taurus. The first comet to be photographed, not the first comet to be discovered, but the first one to be photographed, Donati's comet, which I think is interesting. Charles Darwin completes the Origin of the Species, which is kind of this groundbreaking research and thesis about humanity and like who we are and how we were formed, and kind of goes against this idea of like, you know, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, at least, that, you know, God brought forward man and woman fully formed. And now there's this idea that we evolved from chimps, which at the time was very groundbreaking for people to even like take that in and understand that and not resist that. And then, you know, I don't want to get into like whether someone does or doesn't now, but I'm just saying like that is what was published at this time that was very stark in terms of changing people's perceptions or forcing them to kind of rethink their perceptions. Abraham Lincoln is designated the Republican nominee, and he delivers his House Divided speech. And then the first vision of the Virgin Mary is in Lourdes, France, and Lourdes, France continues to this day to be a place where people visit because, so I do think that there's something interesting here too about a Uranus conjunction, bringing forward this idea of kind of religious figures. And we'll see how that kind of comes through in subsequent ones. As I mentioned at the onset, this conjunction seems to occur, and an astrologer much smarter than me would be able to probably dive into why. But this conjunction seems to occur a lot in the sign of Gemini. But I'm including this one because I think this conjunction in 1775 has a lot of the flavor of what we're experiencing now in 2024, given that this is right around the time where Pluto will be entering Aquarius. It's going to be in the early degrees of Aquarius. 3 Gemini, if you'll allow me, is close enough to Taurus, so why not? And I do think that there's things that we can learn about this one. So this is the beginning of the American Revolution with the first shots fired at the Battle of Concord and Lexington. There's the huge battle at the Battle of Bunker Hill. George Washington is appointed commander-in-chief, which is an interesting designation that he has. And from an American history perspective, those words are important of a commander-in-chief. And then the precursor to various revolutions that are forthcoming in 1776, 1777, et cetera, which is the French Revolution, as well as the industrial at the time, which was the technology revolution of the time. So I do think that this is worth kind of keeping in mind as we go forward. So this is synthesis in practice, where we're likely going. You know, I said earlier, astrology doesn't occur in a vacuum. Another one of those kind of, I don't know, maybe generic statements, but we know history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So what can we expect as we move forward? This is probably my favorite slide of the presentation. It is not the best design slide, so I do understand that, but I just think it's the most fun, just in terms of, well, fun, is that the right word? But if you're like a geeky research person, this slide was fun to research, and then also fun to sort of just think about, okay, if that top half, if we can look at, you know, sort of those themes that we were talking about, from like metaphysical themes, from social themes, technology, science, the arts, when things kind of occur during this conjunction, they have implications for later. So one of the other things I was going to talk about, and I don't know if there's any like Marvel fans out there, but you know, Disney Plus just came out with the continuation of X-Men, and they're calling it X-Men 97. There was a Uranus conjunction in 1997, and that was the last time that episode aired. And now here we are in 2024, and they're picking up and continuing that series as if it never left off. So what the reason I bring that up, and just in terms of, it's important to pay attention to any kind of, I think, either debuts or endings that kind of happen. Anything that's in the news right now, I think, has very potent implications, either in terms of targeting back to a previous conjunction in the past, or from a predictive standpoint, something that we can pay attention to and kind of expect to re-enter the consciousness or the news, or our lives in some way during the next iteration of this conjunction. So I'm just going to kind of go through these, and Chriselle, Jeff, if there is somebody that wants to like jump in and add one or say anything, I'm really happy to go through it, because I also want to do a check. Oh, we're doing fine on time, because I think the next sections are really about the horoscopic predictions. So, and I can
Yeah,
get through those. But yeah,
we're
someone
pretty
that
much
doesn't.
we have plenty of time, and because this is a webinar, it's very hard to get people to speak. You have to ask them to speak, and you have to
Oh,
ask them to
okay.
unmute.
Okay.
So this is really about your talk. There was somebody earlier who thought this was a community discussion, but that's a different program that OPA offers. So feel free to just go right ahead, and any questions that come up that seem pertinent, maybe we'll interject, but otherwise we'll wait till the end.
Okay. Okay, so for the arts,
Thanks,
yeah, no, of course. From 2010, this is when The Walking Dead debuts on television, and it kind of transforms the TV landscape. It was one of the most popular shows, but it also had like kind of lasting implications in terms of how other scripted television series kind of looked at like, and I know Game of Thrones was already written, but this idea of just like, oh, you can off the main character, and like no one really expected that. So I do think that's interesting. 1997, Harry Potter, Buffy the Vampire Slayer come out, which, in terms of like longevity, franchisability, social consciousness, and how people talk about it, and setting the standard, whether from a sci-fi perspective, a horror perspective, a fantasy perspective, kind of set the mold in terms of how others came forward. 1983, Vanessa Williams is crowned the first Black Miss America. 1969, the first Woodstock Festival, Abbey Road from the Beatles and the movie are released at this time. 1954, Lord of the Rings and I Am Legend, which I think is a nice kind of idea of like harkening back to what happens in 1997, because it's like you've got I Am Legend, which then will later be made into a movie many years later with Will Smith, but it's this idea that whatever gets published or whatever debuts just is something that's really going to be important in terms of affecting the culture. So just something to pay attention to. So my 2024 predictions, I'm a little light, I'll be honest, a little weak on my predictions here, but I wanted to bring in the Taurian theme of like from a fashion perspective, what I kind of see happening. And I do think, and I put Twilight, I'm not sure exactly, I think I had a thought about why I put Twilight, but I just think that there's going to be something, and I think I don't know if it's going to be the Three Body Problem on Netflix. I believe that's coming out, and they're saying it's from the creators of Game of Thrones. I don't know. I probably shouldn't like hedge my bets, and I should say like, yes, that's going to be the next Game of Thrones. That's going to be the next Harry Potter. I'm not sure, but there is going to be my prediction is, I'm not identifying which it is, which property it is, whether it's a book, whether it's a TV show, a movie, but something is going to come out that I think is going to be Harry Potter level, if you will. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and I could have put in this, is that I believe in 1954, Godzilla, the movie came out, and this year we're having Godzilla versus King Kong come out. So again, just kind of like, those kinds of things, like, sure, you could call it a coincidence, but it's not. Like, I mean, I think we're all astrologers. We don't really believe in them too much. There's no such thing as them really. But so I just think that's interesting that 1954, God, I could have put that in, but I didn't have enough room. Godzilla comes out 2024, the next conjunction, we're having another Godzilla movie come out. From a technology standpoint, Instagram debuts in 2010, 1983, the first Macintosh computer, the internet is created, or the first inklings of the internet are kind of seeded before it becomes kind of widespread. 1927, the Warner Brothers releases the first feature film with sound, which was very groundbreaking at the time. 1903, the Wright brothers operate the first flight. 1844, the first telegram is sent via Morse code. 1436, the printing press is invented. So this is where I spent a lot of time just sort of kind of diving into what I think is happening right now. So I do think AI is going to be something that, whether it's you want to attribute it to Pluto and Aquarius, whether you want to attribute it to this conjunction, I think AI is going to be a conversation that we are going to continue to have. I think it's also sort of related to this idea of, in the US at least, we're talking about a TikTok ban, and, ByteDance has to sell to a US investor within the next 6 months, I think, maybe. I might be wrong on the 6 months part, but I know that that's something that's in the news right now. So just this idea of like, social media, a reckoning of social media. I think that's more of a Pluto and Aquarian theme than it is necessarily Jupiter and Uranus. But I do think those kinds of ideas of how technology, the access we have to technology, who gets to regulate technology, AI advancements, AI as a society shifter, I think we're I don't know. I guess, you know, I don't want to, again, I don't want to hedge anything. I want to, you know, I'm here to say what I think. I think it's huge. I think AI is a big deal. I think it is society shifting. I don't think we're, you know, and I think even previously when we were looking at Pluto and talking about Pluto and Aquarius, I think we were always talking about it as this is going to be something that shifts the way we live. And I think the moment is here. I do think, you know, I brought up that Kara Swisher, it was always about capitalism thing from Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and all of those guys. And it's just like, yeah, and I hope that we're able to find a way to do it ethically. I hope we're able to do it in a way that's not completely disruptive. To go back to my earlier quote about the idea of, do you have to burn it all down? That quote I shared, do you have to burn it all down in order to start something new? That would be certainly Uranian. But, you know, I hope that there's ways that we can, at least the idea, and I think the whole point of astrology, and I wish more people, you know, but the whole point of discussion beyond astrology is the more we talk about things, hopefully the more we can get ahead of them. And hopefully we can find a way forward that is the most equitable for the most amount of people. Change is always disruptive, and I do think AI is going to be society disruptive, but hopefully we can find a way to mine the good parts of it versus the more potentially scary parts of it. But yeah, those are my kind of technology predictions in terms of AI and social media, and I think the effects of social media. I know this isn't something in terms of me saying it for the first time, but you know, people are talking about social media usage the way, and we're going to look back on that the way we look at cigarettes and, you know, the dangers that it caused, particularly for children, but I think kind of for everybody. So I do think those are going to be part of the conversation in 2024 as well as moving forward. I do think we're going to see a huge advancements in personal and home health tech. You know, I mentioned that I got an alert on my watch, but I think about, you know, a news article from the New York Times. But I think just in terms of a watches or a wearables ability to alert you to a health event, I think that is going to be something that's more widespread in terms of adoption. I think AI gadgets are said to replace smartphone assistants. So like Siri, like what AI gadgets can do, I mean, make Siri and Alexa and all of those other kind of assistants look like almost archaic. And then there's this idea, I think at the company, it might be funded by Elon Musk. I believe it's called Neuralink, but either way, there are these neural headphones that can read your mind. So you can play a video game that's almost like completely immersive because just wearing this wearable, and it's like we can also have a presentation on the neural headphones, but it's just like, I mean, it's kind of like, it's revolutionary. Like, I mean, to just think, I mean, and I'm not making this product up. This product exists. It's more about like the like this is you can look up neural headphones. I mean, I don't know that they're available for for us to buy yet, but they exist and they're here. And pretty soon, I think we're all going to be wearing them. So it's less like, I think that's what I mean when pay attention to like what is talked about in the news, what's debuted right now, and then how that is going to kind of impact our future. It doesn't mean that 2024, my prediction is not 2024 is when we all start wearing neural headphones. It's just pay attention to what kind of is being talked about, because in a few years, that is when it's like, this is the birth of it. Okay, from science, the first sheep clone, Dolly, is born in 1997. In 1955, there's the polio vaccine. In 1884, the first known case of artificial insemination by a sperm donation is made. And there's a whole story about that. It's actually not a great story, but the woman had no idea that she was under the anesthesia at this point, and this was done to her. So that's actually a horrible story. But it is the first time that happened. 1609, Kepler introduces the laws of planetary motion. So this is groundbreaking science at the time, the idea that planets move in elliptical orbits around the sun, not the Earth. And so my 2024 predictions, I had mentioned this in that OPA article, given the Taurus's associations with the body and, you know, how we look and all of that, I do think that 2024 is going to be more conversations around Ozempic, Mounjaro, all of those kinds of quote unquote weight loss drugs. And I'm putting that in quotes too. But just that idea of like how, if the perception is we can all look a certain way or not have to deal with, or I want to be careful how I say this, but you know, the idea of can we eliminate something like some of the health implications of obesity, but then what are some of the societal implications if that's not a factor? You know, I think that those are things that we're going to have to continue to grapple with and wrestle with. There's cancer vaccine trials that are, I think, very hopeful that could indicate that there's an ability to have like a cancer vaccine, and maybe we're talking about the end of cancer. I think the moon has been in the news in terms of NASA's continued exploration of the moon. So I do think that there's, you know, when I talked about that first comet being photographed, or there's always something during this conjunction that kind of brings forward the space travel and exploration. And I think that, you know, again, the Taurian theme, women's health, is a major focus legislatively, but also just other advancements. I read an article that said that Gen Z is, because of, you know, a lot of stories being shared on TikTok or social media about painful IUD insertions, about the many kind of side effects of taking birth control, like increased risk for stroke, headaches, weight gain, this, that. A lot of them are saying, are telling their OBGYNs that they don't want to take these things. So it's kind of created a kind of crisis within that, you know, OBGYNs. And so now they're talking about, okay, well, can we make IUD insertions less painful? Like, aren't there ways that we can make a pap smear more comfortable? And it's just funny that it's like coming at a time when in the US in particular, we're also talking about, you know, fetuses are, you know, artificially inseminated in terms of IVF, like, are they people when they're kind of in like petri dishes? Where, you know, the overturn of Roe v. Wade in the United States in the past couple of years, and just kind of the political implications of that. So I do think that women's legislation and women's health legislation is going to continue to be important and a topic. And then finally, before we move over, sorry, I'm just going to move the sharing screen. So geopolitics, I had met a friend for breakfast in January, and I was talking about, you know, she's an astro enthusiast, not an astrologer. And I was talking about this, and I sort of scared her. So I'm going to be more cautious about not scaring anybody here. I inadvertently scared her just by talking about some of the conflicts and the genocides that are kind of occurring right now. The point of my presentation, and sorry if I'm kind of going off, but the point of my presentation is not to alarm or scare anyone. I think it's more about discussing what's happening. So if I say something, or you know, please feel free to either correct me or let me know. And apologies in advance. The point of astrology is not to scare people. It's just to talk about what's happening. So from a geopolitical perspective, 2010, there was the Arab Spring, which is a series of anti-government protests and armed rebellions in response to corruption and income inequality. In 1969, we saw the Stonewall riots, which was a protest by members of the gay community against unfair police raids. In 1954, we saw Brown versus the Board of Education, which was legislation that ended racial segregations in U.S. schools. So I do think anything that happens from a political perspective, as well as from a military conflict perspective, these kinds of things tend to happen during these times. I know we talked about 1941 being another prime example of this. So I purposely called this 2024 topics, not 2024 predictions. Again, these are things that are currently happening anyway. So I'm not predicting increased tensions between US and China. Those are present. I'm not predicting Ukraine and Russia. That's happening. I'm not predicting the genocide in Gaza. That's currently happening. I'm just saying there will probably be a magnification of these topics, and these topics are not going to go away. There's global supply chains, and domestic industrial policies are probably going to take a much more stark level of attention, and probably legislatively. I know that if you look at sort of like geopolitical trends for 2024, it's like all these corporations are focused on. And I do think that also has implications in terms of layoffs, in terms of investments, in terms of like the amount of like venture capitalists and, you know, their increasingly outsized influence on politics. You know, when you're funding something or you're coming up with like a rocket or something, I think, and having that kind of capital allows you to think that you have influence. And I think that's part of that Jupiterian overreach. So I think those kinds of things are going to be really important. I do think there's going to be corporate AI regulations that are going to be talked about or at least asked for, particularly from a worker perspective, in terms of protection and economic protection. I think part of this is the Great American Eclipse, but I do think this is part of that Jupiter-Uranus signature. It's happening at the same time, so I don't divorce it or compartmentalize it as just the Great American Eclipse. I think it's part of it, the story of, you know, the US's Pluto return, the US's, you know, what happens when Pluto enters Aquarius in the United States, what happens when Jupiter and Uranus are conjunct in the United States, but the fact that we're having an election in this year and the destabilization and the lack of trust in kind of the institutions is going to be important. And then I think that there's rising populism across the globe, and rising populist movements. We see it in Mexico, we see it in the United States, we see it in Austria, Indonesia, El Salvador. There's more that I could have listed. It was really more for space purposes, but you know, I do think some of that is going to be very important. So populism is a word that I think we can associate with Aquarius as well. So I think we have a lot of Aquarian signatures that we need to look forward, that we need to look at while this conjunction is occurring in Taurus. Okay, so I know that this is not the time to stop. Oh, I have two more slides before we get to horoscopes. Okay, so from a metaphysical perspective, I think that during previous Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions, we've seen things like Sigmund Freud. He came forward with his the interpretation of dreams. So Sigmund Freud is someone who, if you look historically, he seems to kind of pop up every 14 years in his trajectory and of like, he usually has some kind of major breakthrough or publication or something that comes forward during Uranus, Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions. So I think those kinds of things, those kinds of themes. I saw a Pentagon report that said, you know, UFOs and alien life is not real. It doesn't exist, even though that, you know, I think just a couple of months ago they were saying they do, or that's possible, or they've been sighted. And I think just kind of the implications of that, whether they're not lying to us, but whether that's true, that there aren't, what does that mean for humanity? This idea that, okay, so maybe we are alone. But then maybe if they're not exactly right about that, I mean, what also does that mean? So I think that those kinds of questions, those kinds of themes are going to be something that we kind of grapple with in 2024, particularly as we tie it back to that idea of moon exploration and, you know, exploring the cosmos. I think in another galaxy, so there's no way we can get there, but I think they saw something about like they saw lights on another planet. But if someone's interested in that, I can follow up. I saw an article, I have it somewhere in my tabs. But I mean, my opinion is yes, there's other life, but what is life? Like we could sit here and define it in any number of ways. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of this Pentagon report, but that's just me. And then wait, did I miss something? Oh, this one. I knew I missed something. Oh, sorry, I clicked too fast. I think there's also religious and political figures tend to emerge during these times. So from we had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States, Robert F. Kennedy. They were beloved politicians or speakers or orators at the time. They also, unfortunately, were both assassinated. Then we have in 1969, the Charles Manson murders, which were kind of this cult leader. And I believe Waco, Texas was around this time as well. So I think that's just something to pay attention to in terms of possibilities. I'm going to quickly, because I do want to say, oh gosh, 154. I'm going to go so quick. Actually, I think I'd rather take questions and go through horoscopes. Am I able to send this out to people? Because it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather talk, but there's like so many to go through. There's 12 in 5 minutes. So you tell me what I should do.
That's fine. I think it's perfectly fine if you want to just read through all these, but if you just want to take Q&A, that's fine too. Somebody asked about what something meant in their personal chart. And I let them know that this was primarily going to be a mundane talk. But of course, you know, the interpretation that you had of every sign would be fantastic, but I understand that it is a few minutes or one. So Maria, I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. We're okay going a little longer. I don't think it'll take more than probably 10 minutes to go through those.
Okay, then
And it's
I'd
okay
rather
to
do
go a
that.
little long.
Yeah, like I'd rather just
Yeah,
finish
go
it
right
if
ahead.
you don't mind. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as
Yep.
long as no one else minds too. And if you have to drop, I totally understand. Sorry. I mean,
I
like I said,
think
I talked
most
fast, but
here will
clearly
be
not
happy to
fast
do
enough.
it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
Okay, so Aries, I do think something that I, as a horoscope writer, I think looking at your rising sign is always the best. However, if you do have placements at 21 of the fixed signs, so if you have your sun there, you have your Mercury there, you have any real placement there, I do think it's important to think about that as well as potentially affecting you. So you can read this for, I would say, your sun sign or your rising sign, but okay, so Jupiter is already associated with themes of largesse and abundance, has a special surprise in store for Aries when it connects with freedom-seeking Uranus. Gainful financial opportunities are likely to present themselves in with this conjunction in the second house of income, affording Aries a sense of financial freedom or a pervading sense of stability and security, even if from an unexpected windfall or an unexpected source of new revenue. Embrace an abundance mindset during this time, and remember that Jupiter encourages you to bet on yourself. So this is a good time for financial investments if you are an Aries, or to sort of somehow have this unexpected opportunity that arises that could increase your finances. Taurus, this is your first house. If necessity is the mother of invention, then opportunity may be a catalyst for reinvention, as Jupiter and Uranus's combination in Taurus in the first house of self offers both. After a series of eclipses rocked the foundations for Taurus over the last years, as did Uranus's unmitigated presence, Jupiter's contact offers a stabilizing presence for any Taurus looking to begin anew. It's a welcome opportunity for a fresh start or the dazzling debut of a new venture, new look, new sense of self-worth and confidence. It's onward and upward for this point from Taurus. So Taurus, I think, was like the main character for quite a bit of time. So I think that's a good thing if you're looking to just sort of have a relief if you're a Taurus. Jupiter, this is your Gemini, this is your 12th house. Where Jupiter goes, healing follows. And for Gemini, this could mean the arrival of a helping hand when it comes to matters related to the psyche, subconscious, and regulating the central nervous system. With this conjunction happening in Gemini's 12th house of the unseen realm, a spiritual breakthrough is on the horizon for those willing to sit with any initial discomfort. The lesson here is working through the urge to act or react, and instead have the grace and patience for yourself to work through any feelings of lack, scarcity, or vulnerability. So this could be something that happens more, I would say, less of a external event and more of an internal one for Geminis. Cancer, this is your 11th house. A welcome, if unexpected opportunity will manifest for Cancer with this conjunction between generous Jupiter and tech-savvy Uranus taking place in the 11th house of groups, networks, and technology. An email could arrive with life-changing news, a text message from a former colleague or community member delivers good news, an invitation to join a network club or other association could finally arise, and some Cancers may be the subject of a social media viral moment that increases fortune or fame. Cancer should err on the side of saying yes instead of playing this transit too safe. So if you're a Cancer, particularly if you're a Cancer rising or Cancer placement on social media, I could see this being a time of change for you, something where you're feeling like you don't have to do what you've always done before. Maybe it's something you offer something unexpected to people in a way that could make them feel uncomfortable, but changes your reputation, if you will, online. Leo, this is your 10th house. It's onward and up for Leo as Jupiter and Uranus combine their planetary energy in the 10th house of career and public reputation. For Leos, this moment is akin to a lucky break, a moment when the cosmic scales tip toward fortune and favor, creating a welcome opportunity for career advancement in the form of a job offer, promotion, or increased pay and visibility. As a sign that was made for the spotlight, this conjunction presents an opportunities for Leo to let their creativity shine as a new breakthrough, innovative ideas may finally be ready for public consumption. So I have a Leo sun that is getting squared by this conjunction. So that's something that I will think about as well. But if you're a Leo rising, just in general, there's something about something that there's an opportunity for a breakthrough in terms of your reputation, in terms of a career promotion or career advancement, something that puts you into the spotlight. I think is happening for Leos right now. For Virgos, this is your 9th house. As a planetary symbol, Jupiter has associations with religion and spirituality. This transit combined with Uranus's co-presence in Virgo's 9th house of spirituality and long distance travel will inspire this normally practical and pragmatic sign to go on a new adventure. While that can easily manifest as a trip abroad, some Virgos could also sign up for a new course of study. Anything that will literally or figuratively broaden their horizons and spark a new sense of wonder. Virgos may find themselves excited that there was so much left to learn, so much life left to learn and life to live. So I think for Virgo risings, particularly since Uranus has been in this sign, but I think Jupiter here too, You know, if someone wanted to start studying astrology or start studying, go back to college or go to school or change something up or learn something new or something that broadens their horizons, this is prime time opportunity for that. Libra, so we're halfway through. This is your 8th house. Transformation is the theme for Libra and the need to surrender control. When Jupiter and Uranus make contact, it's often external events that can trigger the firing of internal systems. So with this conjunction happening for Libra in the 8th house of intimacies, it could be a welcome opportunity to release the reins and let what is meant to happen happen. The planets are offering a deep sense of empowerment through a series of divine intervention type circumstances. There can be healing in psychic, emotional, economic, physical, and mental dimensions. And I think that this is important for Libras to consider that this is co-occurring during Libra eclipses. So this idea of letting go of control, because that's what eclipses also invite us to do, I think is just important to consider. Scorpio, this is your 7th house. Love can be bigger and bolder than the limits of the imagination. That's the message Jupiter and Uranus are offering to Scorpio during this meteoric conjunction in the 7th house of love and partnership. Love can knock you off your socks if you let it. Does that sentence inspire you to go after the love you crave, or does it make you consider or reconsider if your current relationship or relationship status is affording you that opportunity? Big changes are afoot, and you may find a new offer for partnership, and it could be where and when you least expect it. Whatever you do, don't give up on love. Sagittarius, your 6th house. Adventure is calling, and it's up to Sagittarius to answer. As a mutable fire sign, Sagittarius is known for variety, change, and fun. Boring and predictable routines are anything but that. So with Jupiter and Uranus conjunction taking place in the 6th house of daily habits and health, it's a chance for Sagittarius to break free, to risk uncertainty and instability for a longer payoff of a sense of purpose, conviction, and possibility. An unexpected event could rattle the status quo for Sagittarius at this time, but after the shocks, there could be a sense of relief and even excitement at what comes next. So I think that there's this idea that Sagittarius, you have this ability to be the captain of your own ship, so to speak. So, you know, this idea of a 9-to-5 grind or waking up every day and doing the same thing, I think that could probably make a Sagittarius feel particularly bored or a lack of sense of purpose because of that. So this could be an opportunity for you to find meaning again in your daily life. Capricorn 5th house. So when it comes to the idiom work hard, play hard, Capricorns have the first part handled. As far as having fun, however, there can be a million and one excuses as to why now is not the right time to relax. Fortunately, Jupiter and Uranus combining in the 5th house of pleasure arrive for a personal breakthrough. A bit of throwing caution to the wind is in order, as it's the delivery of a genius idea or your creative spark. Any Capricorn looking to add more members to the family should also be prepared for an unexpected dose of amorous feelings, as the need for fertility and fun will manifest strongly. So Jupiter is associated with fertility often. So this could be a welcome opportunity for you if you're a Capricorn rising and you're looking for that. Aquarius, your 4th house. Domestic affairs are at the heart of this transit for Aquarius, as Jupiter and Uranus meet up in the 4th house of home and family. With Uranus rocking foundations for years, Jupiter's contact with this energy may bring some unexpected relief after a long series of ups and downs. Healing of a tense situation is now available, as is the opportunity to upgrade or renovate one's space. Support is around you, so if you need to make a change, now is the time to do it. Real estate opportunities may present themselves, and you may need to act quickly. Pisces, 3rd house. Now is the time for Pisces to make a bold declaration, because with Jupiter and Uranus connected in the 3rd house of communication, there's never been a better moment to make a dramatic debut. For some, this can mean being the deliverer or on the receiving end of a shocking message, one that could have the potential to transform life's trajectory. Others may use this energy to initiate a project like launching a podcast, social media account, or a blog, or otherwise start promoting a life's work, project, or passion. So it's not a time, if you're a Pisces, to be shy. It's a time to make a big, bold debut. And what I wanted to leave us with was this quote: "The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you can alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change the world." And that's a quote from the author James Baldwin. I do think it's important to think about, just in terms of like kind of the perspective I try to bring to most things that give me any sense of anxiety or, you know, the sense of the unknown. But, you know, we just have to start small, and we just have to, or not necessarily start small, but I think it's like, you know, that quote I shared earlier about change being this like disruptive thing, and you have to tear it all down, and like no one ever changed anything by like you know, these micrometers of changes. You know, when I presented that quote in the beginning, I said, I don't even know if I necessarily agree with it, but I do think it's something worth considering because it is an approach. I think this is more in the realm of what I hope of how I hope to, you know, take this energy, and how I hope we, by talking about these things that are potentially scary or even exciting, you know, there's exciting opportunities as well, that we can look at it as an opportunity to bring people closer together. I think that we have, from a societal perspective, a lot of missed opportunities, particularly in the last couple of years, to kind of connect and reconnect and like move forward in a way of like open discussion and not looking at each other as like an enemy. But I know that that's kind of, and like, I think there's been a lot of lack of trust, and social trust and political trust. So what I'm hoping is that there's this Jupiterian kind of influence in the way that we can operate. You know, I think we've all felt those Uranian signatures of Uranus and Taurus and the destabilization aspects. But what I'm hoping is that Jupiter can bring forward a sense that, you know, there's a there's a sense of hope and optimism, and that maybe there's some wisdom from some hard-fought lessons that we all learned in like 2020 and since, and we can bring it forward in a way that feels more positive and more encouraging. So that's what I'd like to leave everybody with. But I do, if anyone would like to come off, I know we're over time, and forgive me for that. I talk fast, but obviously not fast enough. But if anyone does have any questions, I'd be happy to stay on for a little longer.
Maria, thank you. That was a wonderful talk. Very, very thorough, very, very helpful and expansive, appropriately so for all of us. So all your praises are just pouring in from everyone.
Oh,
So
I
thank
turned
you
I
very
did
much.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we have just a couple of questions in the Q&A. People did make comments and had a few questions throughout. There's hundreds and hundreds of chats. To find those would a nightmare right now. So we're just going to address a couple of these real quick. Nadia was wondering, looking at the science column back on that slide, all the different dates throughout the, oh, I don't have my video on, that had all the different dates and all the things that have happened over the years with Uranus-Jupiter conjunctions. Looking at the science column, could Taurus represent fertility, like the first and third points? So perhaps to do with womb implantation or artificial gestation attempts. Brilliant presentation and vibe. Thank you, Maria. So I personally have seen talk of womb implantation and growing human in a artificial environment. So I don't know if you have anything to give to that as well, but it was a little bit more of a comment perhaps than a question. She also mentioned food issue 1997. We saw mad cow disease scandal and farmers issues, GMO, etc. Indeed, that could come to fruition as well. Somebody wondered, how do you distinguish populism from authoritarianism?
Oh, me personally? I mean,
That's a
what?
Oh, it's a little tough to kind of really quite delineate between those. I mean, obviously, I think you can look up the definition of the two. They're definitely two relatively different words. You know, they have different meanings for sure.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what the importance was of that question, but and somebody was wondering about, like I said, a personal, delineation of their chart. You do science, I presume, so if anyone is interested in consultation with you.
if someone wanted to reach out to me, I can go to the next slide. And
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
So you can find me on social media. You can email me. You can go onto my website, which is mariasofiaastro.com. Sorry, I was just going through the comments too. My bad, Jeff. But I was just like, oh, was there anything that I missed in terms of like something I could ask or answer to as well? But I should have just left that moderating to you. So.
Oh, it's fine. I think somebody wondered if a couple of people wondered if they could get this information. Perhaps I think they mean your slideshow. I think if they
I
reach
mean, am
out
I
to
allowed to
you,
do that?
it's
I'm
up to you.
happy. I don't know, like if anyone, am I allowed to? Like if someone, I would be happy to send this out
Yes.
to whoever wanted it.
Yeah. And the recording is going to be available. I frankly, my apologies, everyone. I am kind of filling in for Laura here today, and I haven't done this for a while, so I'm not sure exactly how things work, but I know this recording will be sent out to membership very soon, if not tonight. And as far as the slideshow, if you would like it, Maria, you're interested, you're willing to share it with anyone who reaches out to you. So if you do want this show, you can reach out to Maria with one of her email addresses here, or her email address there.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Sorry if I talk too fast. I'm like going through some of the comments, and I think that was a
Maria, you
problem.
did amazing. It was incredible.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I just feel bad. I mean, I know I do talk fast though, so okay.
It's okay. It's okay. There's a recording, and this is a free presentation. I think that you packed as much as you could into that hour,
Tried.
and I think how much you packed in is impressive. So well
All right,
done,
thank you.
and kudos.
All right,
Yeah.
everybody.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Take
yeah,
care.
absolutely.
All right,
And
bye.
thank you, Christelle, for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Yes.
For being here
All
too.
right. Bye-bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Take care.